Good evening and welcome to the October 3rd ZBA meeting, Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting. I would like to call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. We have a quorum of five, one, two, three, four. Well, we're going to do, who's the alternate? So we have 5 members, 1 alternate, and we're going to proceed with 5 members tonight. We would like to, first order of business is to have approval of minutes. And could we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from September?
Make a motion to approve ZBA meeting minutes from September 5th.
I'll second it.
It's been motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'd like to move into our regular agenda. Our first item is in consideration and possible action for VARZ 24-19, special exception of the expansion of a non-conforming use in the Old Town mixed use. A request by Roberto Marrero, applicant, on behalf of Rango Kitchen LLC, represented by Javier Contreras, owner, for approval of special exception as permitted by the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000-T, to allow the city to use a building permit for expansion of a pre-existing conforming use that is not in compliance with the future land use plan map and or zoning district when the zoning board of adjustment determines that this special exception will not adversely impact water, wastewater, drainage, and street transportation systems, and is in accord with all city codes and applicable comprehension plan policies, including those pertaining specifically to land use compatibilities. We have a general location of 2536 Grand Boulevard, Pearland, Texas. We have staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do. Let me introduce Patrick Bauer to provide the staff report.
Thank you, Katja. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. The request before you tonight is to allow for a building permit to be issued for the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming restaurant use within the Old Town Mixed Use District. And recently there was a covered patio on the property, which was recently demolished. And now the applicant is proposing to rebuild that covered patio, which is approximately 429 square feet. And it's in the same footprint. And specifically, as mentioned in the description of the request, that it's for the expansion because it was demolished. So now we are actually going back and expanding a non-conforming use because it was demolished. If it was just staying in the same footprint and someone was doing like interior alterations to it, it wouldn't be seen as an expansion. But because it was taken off the site, now because it's being brought back, even though it's in the same footprint, it's still seen as an expansion of that building. So to date, staff has not received any comments in favor or against the request. And as mentioned, the zoning of the property is the Old Town Mixed Use District, and we see that same zoning to the east and a portion of the west. And then to the north, northwest generally is the Sullivan Brothers Plan Unit Development. And then to the south is the Baker's Landing Plan Unit Development. And here we get an aerial view of the property. I'll actually do an existing aerial that's a little closer, so don't feel like you need to look in to try to see that patio that was previously there. But just kind of looking at the land uses around that restaurant that's existing, we see some residences to the northeast, and then to the generally northwest. That's where that Sullivan Brothers is being developed right now, and you'll see some of those residences in the images. And then to the west is a medical office. And then to the southeast and south is some undeveloped land. So just a little bit of history on the property. It was originally annexed into the city in 1959. The existing restaurant was then constructed in 1993, and that would be the Juanitos that was previously there. And then, so the site, when it was originally developed, was within the general business zoning in 1993, which did permit the restaurant use. So when it first was developed, it was seen as a conforming use, as it conformed to that zoning. And it wasn't until the zoning changed in 2006 to the Old Town Mixed Use District, which that was kind of the entire Old Town area was changed to its different Old Town Mixed Use, Old Town Residential, Old Town General Business. So it wasn't until that 2006 that whenever the zoning changed, the restaurant use was not a permitted use in that zoning anymore, and that's when it became a non-conforming. But since it existed prior, it'd be seen as a pre-existing non-conforming use, and it's just continued to this day with that use without it going off the site. So it's seen as a pre-existing non-conforming use. And so here we get a look. The aerial and the street view image are from 2022, and you can see outlined in red on both images is that covered patio, and it was originally enclosed, and it's supposed to not be enclosed anymore. It's supposed to be more just like a covered area before you enter into the building. But this kind of shows you where that existing patio did sit previously. And here we get a look at the property today. The left-hand image shows the site as a whole. It's gotten a paint job for the new building or the new owner, and then in the right-hand image, you can see there's kind of a lighter paved area. That's that area where the covered patio, the proposed covered patio, is to go back, and it's going back in the same footprint that area was in that previous image. So it's going back in the same footprint. It's not being expanded from what it previously had been. And so here, just again, we get a look at the proposed expansion, and specifically that covered patio, and it's a 429 square foot covered patio outlined in yellow on the left-hand image. And then the right-hand image just shows that it's essentially a patio cover, so like roofing being added, and it's to create an entrance that is essentially welcoming to walk into as it's continuing as a restaurant. That's what the applicant is wanting to request to be able to do. And so looking at the criteria for approval of a special exception, staff found that the request met criterion 6, which is that, as mentioned, is the one that allows for a building permit to be issued for the expansion of a non-conforming use, because typically a non-conforming use wouldn't be allowed to be expanded, but it's within the purview with this exception that the board can approve an expansion if it sees that it fits in with such things as land use compatibility and surrounding properties. And so as mentioned, the restaurant use is classified as a pre-existing non-conforming use, as the previous zoning did allow for it, and the use has continued on the property. And so the request, as mentioned previously as well, does meet criterion 6 of section 2.7.3.7b of the Unified Development Code. And therefore, staff recommends approval of the special exception to allow for a building permit to be issued for the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Patrick. We have an applicant presentation. Do we have any persons wishing to speak for or against proposal? We'd like to move into staff and commission and applicant discussion. Any questions or comments from the board to the staff or to the applicant?
Sir.
Would you put the motion or the motions up there? Any no questions or comments? Okay. Would you read the motion?
I make a motion to approve variance VRZ 24-19 as presented.
It's been motioned. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'd like to move into our second request. This is a consideration and possible action extension request for ZBA application number VARZ 24-12. A request by Tuong Dong and Sheila Raleigh, applicant on behalf of the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, owner, for approval of an extension of an already approved variance as permitted by the Unified Development Code ordinance number 2000-T to deviate from the required landscape buffer for a non-residential use that has a side or rear contiguous to any residential use or residential zoning district. This has a general location of 1750 Riverstone Ranch Drive, Pearland, Texas. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Patrick, take it away.
Gotcha. So as mentioned, the extension is of a previously approved variance that was occurred at the July 11th, 2024 ZBA meeting. And that variance, as mentioned, is the 1750 Riverstone Ranch Drive, which is the St. Luke the Evangelist Catholic Church. And the variance was to defer the landscape buffer along two sides of the property that they share with Riverstone Ranch single family subdivision. And it was to defer that landscape buffer requirement to a future phase of developing the church, as they were kind of doing more of phases along it's like the northeast side or along one of the sides of the property. That was the reasoning they gave. And the board ended up approving that. And so that variance is set to expire on October 11th, 2024, as variances have a 90-day window in order to submit a building permit. And so that variance would be set to expire on October 11th. And kind of providing some of the actions of the applicant since the ZBA approval, since they are within they're within the single family residential 1 zoning district, since they already previously got a CUP back a couple years back, since they were doing an expansion, they had to get another one, because it says anytime you expand a CUP, you have to get another one. So they did have to go back to city council after coming to the board to get approval for that next phase. And that conditional use permit was approved by city council at the August 26th, 2024 meeting. And then following that, the applicant's goal is to submit by the expiration date. But the extension is being requested specifically to allow for additional time just in case there are any unforeseen delays that impact the submittal. And so the applicant has shown good cause and demonstrated their intent to pursue a building permit with doing the conditional use permit, as well as preparing for their building permits to be submitted. And therefore, staff recommends approval of the request to extend the expiration date for the variance to July 11th, 2025. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, sir. Do we have an applicant presentation? Do we have any persons wishing to speak for or against proposal? Okay, we'd like to move into staff, commission, and applicant discussion. Any questions or comments from the board to the staff or to the applicant?
I have a question for staff. The first extension was 90 days, so why does the second one go for a whole year?
And that's stated in the code. Essentially, the expiration is within 90 days, and then you have the ability to approve it to be from the original date. You can prove it up to a year that they have essentially, it's just to submit a building permit. The conditional use permit actually also has an expiration date, but they just need to submit a building permit, and they're trying to get everything together. And that's how the code reads it. I know typically you may see you have 6 months, and then it kind of goes in more of a understandable pattern. And the code, it just says you have 3 months to get it in, but you can request an extension, and if there's circumstances that are reasoning for why you're not able to do it within 90 days, the board has the ability to say, hey, I understand that, and we are granting you to have a year to get it in. But that's what you're allowed to do it up to a year. You can't go past a year, though.
So it'd be safe to say if they don't get it done in a year, then this is going bye-bye.
Yes, but all you have to do for the variance per the code is to submit a building permit. At that point, they just need to continue working on the building permit. And they've shown they did have to go get the conditional use permit. So it was kind of an additional thing that they needed to handle that, because if they got denied by that conditional use permit, they wouldn't have been allowed to do it essentially. So they had to kind of go through that first. It's kind of a 2-step process with the variance and the CUP.
And you said up to a year. So when I'm reading into that, just for clarification for future situations, we as a board could say, no, this is 90 days more and that's it if we so choose to. Is that, because you said up to a year?
We have the,
Okay. I want that from my knowledge.
yeah, it was up to us to say whatever time frame, but the recommendation that they're saying is up to a year, 4 years.
And know that this is something that we're looking into in the UDC rewrite, is because we've brought a number of these over the past couple of years. Of they get through the process, then they go back into design and are working on things, and that 30-day or that 90-day time frame is just really short unless you are absolutely on it. And so maybe opening that up to 6 months and then come back for a year and a half or something. But know it's something that staff is aware of, and as a business-friendly organization, or at least trying to be business-friendly, it's something that we're examining.
Sounds good. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions, comments from the board to the staff or applicant?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the variance 24-12 as presented.
It's been motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. And this concludes the Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting for October 3rd, 2024 at 6:16 p.m.